All right, Carlos, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Burke. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Let's start with a very brief intro about you, your background, and what you're doing right now.
Okay, I'm a CEO and a founder of the X8 Investments, which is a growth capital investment firm in Brazil. We also have one fund in the US focused on companies that are willing to go to the US from Brazil to the US. In Brazil, our current fund, we are focused on mid-sized Brazilian companies, high growth, run by exceptional entrepreneurs. And our last filter to decide if we are going to invest or not in the company is if the company has impact in their DNA. We say here that if you take the impact out of the company will no longer exist. So those companies are the companies that we are invest. So we are not an impact fund, but we just invest in companies that have impact in their DNA.
How do you measure how impactful a startup's going to be? Or you mentioned investing in exceptional founders. How do you measure how exceptional founders, or what are some parameters you look at?
Yeah. First, we look for entrepreneurs that are scaling up entrepreneurs. We make like a assessment from them how they are in the environment, how they are how they run their business, what they did before. It's very important for us as well, and the community they are involved in. So it's very important. We know that in this phase of investments, what it, I would say that 80% of the success lies on the entrepreneur. That's why we are. I think that the most part of our due diligence is like understanding the entrepreneur and seeing where they are involved and what they did before. And also we have a very strong relationship with Endeavor, and we follow some of the Endeavor parameters like scale up companies and how they manage their businesses.
You mentioned due diligence and specifically really looking into who the founder is and if they're going to be able to really succeed. And you mentioned background. How important is things like education and experience to you when evaluating a founder?
We like to invest in companies that, let's say, the entrepreneur has experience in the field they are investing, they are managing. It's very important for us first look at what as I said, what the entrepreneur did before, especially if in the field of the company they are running at the moment. And also it's very important to know the team, né? The team that the entrepreneur put together, and how long they are working together, and if they are not working for so much time together, how they would manage potential conflicts or potential crises among the team and the entrepreneur.
You mentioned disagreement. I had another investor on, and he mentioned how disagreements are a big part, or having a stress tested relationship and being able to see that in the founding team is really important for them. If you're a founder and you're approaching investors, they've always have this objection in their mind of like, are they going to be able to deal with conflict? How do you, as a founder, with your partners, with your team, show to the investor that you can get across these types of disagreements?
Yes, I think first, of course, there is something that I always like put a lot of effort in is like to meet the entrepreneur, meet the team, and this face to face thing that we understand better the person inside the business first. The second, we like to see and make an assessment of the bylaws, because we say here that bylaws is something that you shouldn't have to use. But there is something that you have like a brake that in a case you can push the brake and use it. So that's why we like to see how they put all these kind of potential conflicts or crises in their bylaws or in their regulation of the business.
Absolutely. You mentioned you've got a fund in Brazil and then you've also got a fund in the US, but your fund is mainly based in Sao Paulo and mainly invests in Brazilian entrepreneurs and Brazilian companies. I've noticed a very interesting trend lately where there are less founders around me who are obsessed about going to places like San Francisco and New York, and a lot more of them who are now looking to, oh, South America's an option. Oh, Asia's an option, certain Asian countries, Singapore, South Korea, etc. I want to get your take on what the larger, broader South American tech ecosystems like startups, venture capitalists, etc., and then your specific thoughts on Brazil as a startup hub, where it's headed, where it's at right now, what's exciting you, what's kind of keeping you up at night.
That's a very good question. I think that we used to say here in Brazil that being an entrepreneur in Brazil, you can be an entrepreneur everywhere in the world, because the bureaucracy here is quite tough. We have to deal with bureaucracy and also to understanding our taxes in Brazil. Just to give you an example, I used to be Ernst Young's partner, a consulting firm, and I used to run the transactional advisor service. And I remember, like when we were performing a due diligence, let's say in the US, I would say that 70% of our time or 80% of our time we used to use for financial, and 30 to 40% to taxes. Here in Brazil, like I would say like 90%, 80% falls in taxes and labor issues, which is very tricky because we never understand 100% of the law and 100% of the tax situation here. So this is, I think, the one of the biggest challenge for the Brazilian entrepreneurs is bureaucracy, tax structure, and labor laws. And but on the other hand, the market is so like big, and also there are so many opportunities, and the Brazilian entrepreneurs and Brazilian people are so creative. I think maybe because of all these things all these challenges that which makes us like companies that are growing 40, 60, 70% a year, despite of the fact if the economy is going well or not. So this is very good. But on the other hand, when what made me like thinking about investing in the U.S. and putting all those companies going to the U.S. is access to capital, which is much better in the U.S. You will have in every phase of the company there is someone or one group like willing to invest in that phase of the company. The market is huge. The competition is huge as well, which is very good for our Brazilian entrepreneurs to learn how to compete better. And of course, the exits are, we have more options of exits in the US. So that's why we planned like, okay, we are very creative here. We know how to do the business. We can grow the company here. We can grow companies like 90% a year. And when they are in one size that justifies, we transfer part of the operation to the US, you're gonna be like a startup in the US, but with let's say a mid-sized big company in Brazil already successful. So that's our our idea.
That's really interesting. I've seen a couple builders do that where they, in the beginning stages where, you have to manage the runway and make sure that things are all set up and you have to make sure that there's that base growth. They go to a country like Brazil or Indonesia or, El Salvador, somewhere where they can live relatively, where they can keep the burn low, But then once they get to a certain growth state, they're immediately back in New York or San Francisco or in a place like that. So it's really interesting that you say that. In terms of if you're a young founder today, I'm sure you've traveled to a bunch of places in the United States. You've been in obviously Brazil. I'm sure you've been to a bunch of different South American countries and maybe Asia and Europe as well. Do you think that if you're, let's say, in your 20s, you've maybe just got done with college, maybe you've got done with high school, and you're just like, I want to build, I want to make sure I can, build a startup and be successful. Where are you going as a young founder? Do you think it's worth to give starting a place like South America out, and then you move to the US as you grow, or do you think it's growing, starting growth in the US is better?
It's a very good question. I think younger entrepreneurs, I think we have a lot of things to learn with young entrepreneurs. Of course, they are more resilient. Of course, they have a new language that we are older than don't have yet. You are native speakers in a new language that we are foreigners for that language, which is innovation, a lot of things that are so much different, and you are much more global than we used to be. So that's why I think it doesn't matter a lot if you are trying to make your endeavor in Brazil or in the US, wherever. I think if you are good, you're gonna be successful in all of them. Of course, if you are like an American entrepreneur and are willing to do something here in Brazil, I think it's very good idea having a local partner, and the opposite the same. If you are a Brazilian entrepreneur willing to go to the US, it's very good to have a local partner because we are very similar in many things, but there are subtle cultural differences that we have to be aware, and sometimes we can lose a lot of time trying to understand these cultural differences. So if you have a local partner, you're gonna gain at least like a year understanding these differences and this business difference between the countries.
Absolutely. A big part of the fundraising process is reaching out to investors. Now, I know that a lot of entrepreneurs they tend to just kind of spray and pray, where they send as many emails as possible. If you were a founder today, as in if from the perspective of an investor, how would you go about finding the right funds and the right angels to approach? And then how would you approach them? What are some approaches maybe founders have made on emails they've sent you or calls they've made to you that have actually gotten you interested, where you've been like, oh, I'd have a chat with you guys.
Uh, I think there is one tip for fundraising. First is like when you are approaching an investor, you have to keep in mind that this investor is being approached for a lot of people, tons of people every day, and we as investors we have to manage our time because we have to work. And it's very common here in Brazil, like somebody sends you an email or a cold call saying, okay, I have a good idea. I have this, I'm fundraising for this or that. And can I visit you or can we have a coffee together or whatever? And and you can you imagine if you go to all these coffees or meetings, whatever, you will not work. So I think first thing is keep in mind that these people have a lot of people approaching them and they don't have too much time to talk to you. But the good news is these people is being approached. So for many of people, they know and they are very fast to understand the opportunity. So if you are able to like elevator speech, okay, if you are able to do this very fast, very quick, and the investor gonna take the opportunity in 3 4 minutes, you don't need more than this. So and of course, if you can catch the interest of the investor in these 4 three, four first minutes, of course they're gonna open the agenda and they will be interested in you, and they go further with the meeting or whatever, and probably they will ask you to invite you for the coffee.
What should that elevator pitch look like?
The elevator pitch is like you imagine you are in the first floor and you meet the investor in the elevator, inside the elevator, and you both are going to the 20th floor. And you have this time to pitch your idea. This is the elevator pitch. Or you can like take a match and light the match and keep it burning until it gonna burn you. So this
So
like
what
3 minutes, 4 minutes is good.
Mhm. So one of the angles is really take the time as a founder to be very concise with what you're building. So just constantly practice, set a timer, set the match on fire, and just keep, pitching it in the shortest way possible. I want to talk to you about how to structure that pitch. Do you go in by focusing on the problem? Like, here's the problem this community faces, these are the stats, and then here's how we're going to solve it. Is that kind of the roughly the structure? What kind of structure do you like to see from these pitches?
It is good. I think another advice is like people waste a lot of time sometimes talking about the idea or the product, wherever, and forgetting that there is a market and there is a problem. I think the first thing to approach is like, okay, this is the problem, but this problem is the market for this problem is this big. Because sometimes the problem is interesting, the idea is good, but the market's not so big. So as much as you can show that you're gonna like having a very big market and the problem is very important for that market, and people will be willing to pay for that solution. This is the best pitch.
So, when in the mind of a builder, in the mind of a founder, it's product, features, our team. But in the mind of an investor, it seems to be the reverse, where it's like problem, market size, and then willingness to pay. Those are the things that you care about and prioritize in that order, not necessarily the product or the feature. Am I understanding that right?
You're right. I would say that this is first like the first way the way to start the pitch. It's like the problem, the market, and this. But of course, you have after that show that you have a good product, you have a good team, good features, etc., etc., etc. But doesn't matter. Like I see a lot of people like just talking about the product and the features and whatever, and the product is fantastic, but the market is not so big and the problem is not so important.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the market for a minute. Choosing something. So a lot of there's this idea of ideas that are fundable versus ideas that are not really fundable because they can't really reach the size that venture capital wants. If you're a founder today and you're thinking, I want to build a VC backed startup, I want to raise funding, how do you strategically go about picking an idea and evaluating the market to know that your idea is going to have the size to be able to fundraise?
Yeah, the market you're gonna address, of course, is very important. I believe that you have a lot. There are a lot of questions between if you have to invest in a company that is a B2B or a B2C company. I believe that the best ones, the unicorns, gonna be in the B2C area first, which is more difficult to understand the market, to address the market, to see if the market is relevant or not. But there are a lot of indications before we start your company, because when you address the problem, it's easy to understand how big the market is. I would say, like in Brazil, I remember when people starting a startup with this app to ask for cab for taxis. For it, the market was huge at all, so it was easy to address the market. And the only challenge was to see if people would be willing to use the app and pay for the app or pay for the service. So it's not so easy. Sometimes it seems difficult, but I would say that there's always something that precedes the actual investment or the actual company that you are starting, because we are taking something that's old fashioned. You see a problem there, the market's already there, and it's easy to address. So, and then the challenge is, okay, I'm good in taking people from my inside my idea and taking people to use my app or my idea or my company.
Awesome, Carlos. Those are all for the questions I've got. Is there anything that you'd like to add? Any tips, any pieces of advice?
Oh, I think we have, there is a piece of the advice, yes. I think we are, uh, the, the world itself is developing, it's developing very fast. There are always something new happening in terms of technology. You have AI, you have a lot of different things happening, and but we are still human beings. And it's very important for new entrepreneurs to see that there is a huge opportunity in human beings. Because as much as we are growing and developing in terms of technology, as we have more time to think about yourselves, to think about our health, to think about our happiness, to think about our neighborhood, a lot of different things. So these tools, these technology tools that we have, gonna make us more free to think about the world, to think about ourselves, and to think about the community. And we gonna be, and these people gonna be spending money in the future in order to be healthier, younger, and happier. And there, I think there is a huge opportunity for the future.
Awesome.